Hey, and welcome to episode 3 of the Crossing from You to You podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Dorita, also known as Miss Mindful on social media. Today, I'm going to share with you the one decision that I decided to make that was the catalyst in creating space for my awaken to deepen exponentially. This one decision completely woke me up. There was no more numbing out, no more ignoring, no more distracting myself from what was taking place inside of me and what I was supposed to be doing here on this earth in this iteration of my soul's experience here in the physical world. My intention for this episode is to be vulnerable, as always, and share with you a method, just one decision that you can make or not make if you're really interested and ready to meet yourself deeper. If you are ready, you are interested, you want to know more about how to awaken and continue awakening to your true self, stay tuned in. And by the end of this episode, you'll have a tangible action that you can choose to take today to help you make the crossing from you to you. So we're going to go all the way back. We're going to go way back in time here. And I don't even know what the year is, but it's before I was born. So I grew up in a family of recovering alcoholics. So my parents, when they met each other, they were using alcohol and drugs. Let's say that they were junkies, alcoholics. And they got together and they met and they ended up getting sober together and then having this beautiful family of 3. So I have a brother that's older than me and a sister that's younger than me. And so I was birthed into this world and had these beautiful, loving, wonderful, amazing parents. If y'all are listening, I love you guys so much. And I'm so grateful for your story and your journey because it has completely changed my life. And it has given me the opportunity to step in so much sooner than if, your story and your journey didn't take place. So yeah, I was birthed into this world, and from the moment I got out of the womb is how I share this, is I've been told that if you use any sort of alcohol, drug, any sort of substance, that you're going to die. Like, you're going to die. And so I always heard, if you do this, then this is going to happen. If you do that, then you're going to die. And if you start using these drugs, then you're going to be on Piedmont Street in Worcester sucking dick for heroin. Like, literally, I would hear these things. And it was just over time. It's just all I heard. Like, it was always in my life. I grew up in recovery. My parents live recovery. They are just, I want to say, if you see like a billboard of recovery, like, they're on it. They're doing all the work. They're going to meetings. They're sponsoring people. They're literally changing people's lives. And all they were trying to do is make sure that their beautiful children didn't have the same experience that they had. So it was always very open in my family. We always talked about it. It was always stories. And I just remember being, someone in my family, one of my parents would be like, hey, you'd never believe this. And in my head, I'm like, what? Somebody after 20 years relapsed. And I would be like, what? Tell me what? And they would tell me that. I'm like, I don't freaking care. I don't care. Why are you guys telling me this? I got it. Like, you brought me up and you've been telling me this my whole life. Like, just stop. Just shut up for a moment. Like, I don't want to talk about recovery. I don't want to talk about drugs. And like, it was like any moment there was that we started talking about drugs or drugs came into the situation, be like, oh yeah, well, if they weren't drinking, they would blah, blah, blah. So I can tell you, I was stuffed to the brim and I would just about had it, of hearing all of this information. It was too much for me. And I do see why they were protecting their little children and their, teenage children and their adult children. So yeah, let's just continue on. Let's just say, like, that's just the conversations that were always happening. It was always very open in my family, which I super love and I'm so grateful for, because literally I would not be on here recording this podcast if I didn't have my beautiful parents that decided to make the decision for them to get sober. So again, I never grew up with alcohol or drugs in my life. Never saw my parents use. There's always been sobriety in my life that I've witnessed from my adult figures, which are my parents. All their friends are in the program. Like, it was just, I grew up in recovery is all I can say. So I can say I was scared. Like, if I pick up this thing, I'm going to die, like, and you just see everybody else using it. So yeah, I went through my whole adolescence, let's say, and I never used anything. I do remember there was one time in high school, I think I was a senior, and I had a couple shots or something, right? And I'm somebody that I am reactive instantly. And I just remember like falling down the stairs. I wasn't drunk by any means and just like hitting my head. That was my first experience with alcohol. But I didn't drink in high school. Like I didn't smoke weed. I actually was really afraid of smoking weed because for some reason I just knew that if I tried it, I was going to like it. And so, yeah, I really stayed away from everything. My siblings, we all did. I mean, I can tell you we had some of the best summers and best hangouts. Like we all hung out together. Me and my siblings were all 16 months apart. I'm in the middle. I have an older brother and a sister a year younger. So we're all 1 year apart. And so it was just cool. Like my siblings were my best friends. They still are to this day. They had friends. We all hung out together, and all of our friends, none of us drank. None of us did anything. We just lived this really beautiful life. I remember we used to just have fires all the time on the weekend and just like throw Axe bottles in it and watch things blow up. And we would just do so much fun stuff because we didn't need anything to have a good time. Like we didn't need a substance to have a good time. I remember we'd be playing flip cup with water, and it was just the most fun time ever. We had just like the best summers ever. We'd go to Friendly's and we'd get ice cream and we'd walk home, or we'd walk to Moe's. Like Moe's is in Shrewsbury, and it was just like the best when we were younger. So yeah, I just had a really beautiful childhood. I had a really beautiful high school experience, and it was all away from drugs and all away from alcohol. And so let's fast forward to when I started using. Yeah. So I went to college. I went to Nichols College in Dudley, Massachusetts. It's this really small school. It was half the size of the high school that I went to, which was Shrewsbury High School. And I played college sports. Well, I only went to play one sport, and I ended up my drinking and drugging got me into another sport. So that's another story here. So I didn't want to drink at all. I went to college 20, 30 minutes down the road, but I was living on campus, and I made sure that I was taking class on Friday morning at 8 a.m. because everybody goes out on Thursday nights, and I had an excuse. I can't go out because I have class at 8 a.m. I can't drink. I can't go out, right? So I would go to class at 8 a.m. I would skip the partying the night before on Thursday, and I would drive home after my class. I don't know, maybe the class like an hour and a half. I would be in Shrewsbury at my parents' house by like 10 o'clock in the morning. And I would share the whole weekend at home because it was safe for me. It was what I knew. And I was very uncomfortable being around other people that were drinking and all of that. Because I'm like, you guys are going to die. Like, don't you know if you pick this stuff up, you're going to die? And so I was just safe and I was sheltered, right? And my parents did the best that they could, and they didn't try to shelter me, right? But like the thing is, it's so socially expected to drink. And so I didn't have any like tools. I just knew to run home to my safety. And so I did until I wasn't able to do that anymore. So yeah, this is the first semester of college, and I played ice hockey, and the season starts, right? And this is the biggest drinking team on campus. Like literally, it's so funny that this happened, but they were drinking so much the year before that the new coach that was coaching this team put in a dry season. So a dry season means that you are not able to drink any alcohol or consume any alcohol for the whole entire season. And I was like, cha-ching, like what? Hell yeah. Now I don't have to, go out and drink and party. Like we have this excuse. We can't. We're going to get kicked off the team if we start drinking. So anyways, I wasn't able to continue going home on the weekends. My hockey season started. We had practices, we had games. And so the only way to really make friends, I just felt like I wasn't fitting in because people were drinking. And I didn't have that safety to go home anymore. And so, in the beginning of my using, just friends were like dragging me out. Just like, come on, you're coming out with us. You're not going home this weekend. And, I was really grateful for this person because they really got me out of my shell. But I was using this alcohol that was going to kill me, supposedly. And who knows? could have possibly killed me in the future. So I started drinking. And my brother and I, we went through this experience together that really hurt both of us. And I'm not going to go into the details here, but my brother was really, 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 really upset. And I remember I went home to visit. I don't know if it was Thanksgiving, and he was smoking weed. And I was like, what the freak? You smoke? Like that, you're going to die. And he was really upset, and he was just in a space that he wasn't feeling good. He was a little bit depressed. Just this whole thing that happened just exploded in both of our faces. And I was like, okay, and I remember I was at a party, and it's so cute. All of my siblings, like, we would all be at the same party together. And he's like, try to, smoke this. And I was like, all right, like, you're doing it, so I guess that's okay if I'm doing it. Like, you're still alive. So I smoked it, and, I just remember like gagging and almost throwing up because it was just horrible. I mean, if you've ever smoked a cigarette or smoked weed for the first time, it's not a pleasant experience, and I don't know why anyone goes back to doing it. But so I saw that my brother was doing it, and my sister started to do it as well. So I was like, like, everyone's doing this, so maybe it's okay. So I still remember the first time that I got high on marijuana. We were sitting in my parents' basement because they used to go to Aruba for a couple of weeks, and we would have the whole house to ourselves, and there would be a cousin that was staying with us, or there was someone watching out for us. But I just remember being downstairs in the kitchen. We rolled up this big blunt, and my brother's like, you're just going to sit here and you're going to smoke this until you're high. And so I smoked it. And I remember I got on a call. I was calling like Papagino's TBT. And I was on there, and they were like, yeah, is this pickup or delivery? And I remember I said, this is for delivery. And I started dying laughing. I hung up the phone. I couldn't stop laughing. And that was my experience of the first time that I was high. And it was amazing. I was just like, wow, this is great. Everyone's funny. We're having a great time. We're all bonding so much deeper, quote unquote, so much deeper than if we were sober. And it was just fun. And so I actually thought that my way around addiction was to start smoking marijuana, because marijuana is just a plant that grows on earth, right? It grows in some of our gardens, and it's natural, and it's okay. It's not addictive. Like, there's no way to get addicted to it. And so really my way around addiction was to smoke. And so I went back to college, and, after whatever it was, maybe it was intersession during, one semester to the next, and I was smoking weed. And I remember I looked at one of my girlfriends, and I was like, hey, how much do you smoke? And this person replied to me, I smoke like 4 times a week. And I remember my jaw hit the ground. I was like, that is so much. You smoke that often? That's a lot. And that moment sticks out to me because I was smoking every day, all day long at the end of my using. And so, so I got back to college, and I was just smoking. It became part of my identity. And I would also go out and drink, but I wouldn't drink a lot because I would always get really sick from drinking. Like, my whole chest would get red, my face would get red. I'd break out in these hives, and I would get sick. Like, it didn't even matter if I had 1 drink, 2 drinks. I would either have a stomach ache all night, or I would throw up. Or even worse, I ended up finding out this really messed up way for me to manage my drinking, and so that I would feel better, so that I could actually go out and do it. And so all this to say is I was out and I was drinking and I was partying because I felt like it was the only way that I could fit in and connect with everybody that was also in college that was doing the same things. And so during this time, I remember my relationship with my mother being very tumultuous. Okay, you guys know what I'm trying to say. I wasn't an English teacher. Tumultuous. I don't know. Okay, we're gonna stop. And it was because I had this beautiful connection with my mother. Best friends. We were always there for each other. We just had deep connections with my whole family. I have a beautiful family. And, they saw us starting to use alcohol and drugs, and they had no idea how to manage it. And, I think that my mom was more in tune with us because she was always with us. She is the one who just spent the most time with us. And so I had just like this, I don't know if it was just a mother-daughter connection, but I had this really deep relationship with my mother. And when I started using it, was like this huge disconnect happened because she didn't know what to do. I felt like she was judging me. I was projecting all of these things onto her, like that she wasn't happy with me, and that I was a loser, and that I was going to die, and that I'm an addict. And, so actually I attribute, the reconnection of our relationship together to Al-Anon, which is a program I mentioned in the second episode, I'm pretty sure, of people that go to receive support because one of their loved ones is using or is an addict. And so this really helped my relationship with my mother because we got to she just got to accept me for who I was and realize that she can't control me. She can't control me using. Like, she brought me up, my dad brought me up, they all brought us up in the most beautiful, loving way that they knew how to bring us up. They told us all the dangers. They told us what would happen if we started using, and they really educated us as much as they could, right? To a point where I was at a point of defiance. You guys messed your life up. Why does that mean that I can't use? I'm fine. I could stop whenever I wanted. I don't really even like to drink, but I like to smoke. And so anyways, I have no idea when things changed for me, because it just happens. I don't have a memory where I was like, oh, this is where it really turned for me. But I don't know. There was some point where people were dragging me out to go to parties. Like, I didn't want to go. You're not going home for the weekends. Come out with us. Come party with us. Just have a couple drinks, then go home. I don't know when it changed from that, people dragging me out, to me dragging people out, be like, it's Thursday, let's go, let's just have a beer, let's get, whatever. I don't know what it was about Thursdays, but I would say it took a couple of years, but I was really smoking heavily. It was my identity, I loved to roll. I loved to roll, joints or blunts. Like, it was like something artistic for me. It was great. I just felt a part of, I felt together with people. I felt connected. I had friends, like we'd go smoke all the time, I started getting high for everything. I was getting high for the lift every single day, or no, we had lifts. So weightlifting for college hockey, we lifted weights, and it was that a few times a week. And me and my girlfriend, we would just go get high and before a lift. And then it was like, let's just get high before a game. And then I took this class in college because I was a math education major. I took this class called Higher Foundations of Math, and you bet that I was high for every single class just because the name was Higher Foundations of Math. So I'm like, I'm going to be high and stoned for all of these classes. It was just ridiculous, and I was just getting high all the time. Let's keep this story moving. I was really, really, really sick right before I think this was sophomore year. Yeah, sophomore year of college. I was really sick, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to eat dinner and be ready for the game tomorrow if I didn't go get high after practice and then go to the dining hall to get food, because I wasn't going to eat because I was sick. I wasn't hungry, but I knew that if I went and got high, that I would be hungry. I'd be able to fill my body with stuff so that for the next day I could be good. Not even thinking putting smoke in my lungs wasn't going to be good for my stamina playing hockey, right? Everyone on my team, they dropped me off at my car. They knew what I was doing. I got high. I put everything away. I drove up to the dining hall, which was a 1-minute drive. And I got spooked because I saw public safety, and I just put the joint down and got out of my car while the guy was walking by, just panicked. And I went into the dining hall. And mind you, this is just coming back to my memory. We all had to be at this event where the speaker was talking about drugs and alcohol and the NC, what is it? I don't remember what the NC is, not NCAA, but it might be NCAA, the rules and the regulations for playing a collegiate sport. And just because the season was starting, you go through all these different things where they tell you can do this, you can't do this, and this is what happens if you get in trouble. So I realized after I'm done eating, I left my water bottle in my bag, in my car. So I went back to my car and I walked through I just walked through one of the buildings, and there was a cop and a public safety officer, and they looked at me and they were like, hey, do you drive a Toyota Camry, a silver one? I was like, yeah. They're like, come with us. And I was my heart sunk. Long story short, the public safety officer smelled the weed when I got out of my car, and then he just looked in my car and saw the joint there because I panicked and just left it out in plain sight. So, yep, I'm on the phone with my coach. I'm like, the police officer is saying like, you were under the influence and driving. I'm like, but I only drove 1 minute. And he's like, I could be a real a-hole right now. And I could, get you for driving under the influence. I was freaked out. I had a game tomorrow. We were going to Manhattanville. And it was a whole weekend trip. I had to call my coach. He's like, you need to go home. You need to go home. So I'm like, oh my God, I got to call my parents. I have to call my parents and tell them this. It was devastating. I ended up getting suspended for a third of my season from hockey. And, later on, I went to go get in trouble again because the police officer was like, or I don't know who said it, the public safety or police officer was, well, let me come back. I got a slap on the wrist. I got $100 fine and I got suspended for a third of my hockey season and they put me on probation at school. They went back to my apartment. They looked through all my stuff. Thank God I didn't have any alcohol in my fridge. I did have weed brownies, but they had no idea that they were weed brownies. And it was horrible. So I went home for the weekend and then again, let's fast forward. I ended up getting in trouble again because the public safety officer was like, don't smoke on the policeman was like, don't smoke and drive. If you're going to smoke on campus. So what do? I smoke on, I'm getting my story mixed up. He's like, don't smoke on campus. So what do? I smoke and drive. So I'm driving, same thing happens. Somebody pulls me over because my expiration or my license plate or something, my registration, I forgot to change the sticker. Like I had the right sticker in my car. I just didn't put it on it. He pulled me over, smelled the weed, got out of the car, did the whole sobriety test on me. He threw and he confiscated all of my stuff. And it was just, again, another slap on the wrist, $100 fine, followed me back to the school. And I was like, shit. And so then that's when I started holing up at school or like in the back of my car and just smoking, and hiding it. I actually ended up picking up another college sport because I had too much time on my hands. I don't know how I had too much time on my hands. I had school, I had hockey, but I had this whole free season. And, so I ended up trying out for the softball team, made the softball team and ended up playing there. I remember the coach was like, if you're going to be smoking weed, like don't get off this team, all this stuff. I was still smoking weed throughout the whole thing. So all of this is to say, I don't know what happened, but I just was smoking and drinking to fit in and to have fun. And then all of a sudden it was just like I was using alcohol or weed, mostly weed. Alcohol really wasn't my substance. All the time. I remember that I would go out and like actually party and drink. And I remember here is like my little thing that I figured out would make me feel better the next day. If I was conscious enough when I got home from a party, I would make myself throw up. So I'd put my fingers down my throat. I would make all this alcohol, everything come up. I would eat a nice meal. I would take some Motrin. I would chug a water and I would go to bed. And this is if I was capable of doing this and even remembered to do this. And then the next morning I would just get high all day because it would take away the hangover. And it's like, that is so unmanageable. Like how was I doing that? And why was I living that way? And then once I was a senior, I had my own, I was living in a room with 6 other women. I had a single. We had our own bathrooms. Like I was just getting high in the bathroom. It was just insane. It was completely insane. And when I go home for the summer, I was smoking all the time. I was hiding it from my family. Like it was just really crazy. But you know what? My siblings were using as well. And it was just like, we bonded. Like we got a lot tighter over it because we knew mom and dad weren't happy with us. And so really we just stuck together and bonded with each other. So all of this to say, I don't know what happened, but it just got out of control. And I remember I would take off time from smoking because I literally wasn't getting high anymore. I never was a cigarette smoker, but if you're a cigarette smoker, it's just like when a cigarette just really doesn't do anything to you. You just smoke it. But when you first smoke one, you just, you get the spins and all that stuff. So I would take these tolerance breaks, call them tea breaks, and when I was in that time, I noticed myself, I would be drinking more often. So if it wasn't the weed, then the booze would sneak in. And so, my story just starts to get, deeper and deeper in this, and I start to get more wrapped up in it. Let's come to when I made the decision to stop. also a little bit before that, I started going to festivals, and that's where I was introduced to like Molly and ecstasy. Cocaine I never really got into. I tried it a couple times, but the only thing I knew was to stay away from pills, because if I tried pills, I was going to be effed. And so really alcohol was the gateway to me trying weed, and then it was the gateway for me for trying coke and acid and Molly and ecstasy and all of those things. So it was the gateway for me, because if I wasn't under the influence, I don't know if I would have tried these other things. So I told a story on my last episode, in episode 2, of how I met this guy at a festival. It just brought me to a real bottom. He ended up relapsing on heroin. And so like it was just a huge awakening for me of, holy crap, like I don't want a partner who's going to be relapsing. Why I'm meeting all these people at these different places. I remember I went on a blind date. It wasn't a blind date. I just didn't remember the night before when I met this person. And then the next morning I woke up with a text saying, hey, we still going out tonight for dinner on a date? And I'm like, who is this? Just embarrassing things like that. And I can say that I only blacked out a couple times. I would say 2 times, 3 times I've blacked out. Woke up in my own throw up. This was in college. So really alcohol wasn't the issue for me. It was weed, but when it wasn't weed, it was alcohol. And if it wasn't alcohol or weed, I don't know what it would have been. So I shared again on my first episode, one of my biggest awakenings was when I was in a deep meditation at this retreat called Fit for Service in Austin, Texas. And I was with 120 some other individuals that were like-minded. I was in a very deep meditation with everybody. And I just remember bawling my eyes out. Like my whole body was shaking. I knew that something was off, and I knew that something was happening. It was, again, I'm like double dipping and sharing another story that I've already shared before, but the meditation was about a lighthouse and just being the brightest that you could possibly be, so that you're attracting those bright souls to you. And if you're not the brightest you can be and you're dim, you're actually attracting those other creatures to you as well, because they're vibrating at the same frequency. And so I remember being in teaching, and I'm like, I wish that teachers got drug tested, because then I would have an excuse to not smoke. And I'm like, that's pretty messed up. Why do I need an excuse not to smoke? Like, I never wanted to drink or smoke. I gave my power up, because that's the way that I thought that I was going to be able to fit in with other people. And on the hockey team that I was on, like, that's how we bonded. That's just what you do in college. And it's just this really messed up way of engaging with people and connecting with people. And it's just so expected, socially expected to drink everywhere you go and to connect with people and to party with people. And there's always booze around, or there's always, I think nowadays more pots coming around, more weeds coming around with all these dispensaries opening up and the legalization and all of that stuff. So I got this message to be completely sober. I remember we went out to eat after this meditation, and I was waiting for my friend to order a drink. And he didn't. And I was like, you're not going to order a drink? And he was like, no. And I was like, okay, if he's not going to order one, then I'm not going to order one. And I'm like, but wait, why don't you drink? And he was like, yeah, I just made this decision a couple years ago that I just didn't want to be using any substances. And I met a lot of people at this retreat that weren't using substances. And whenever I met somebody that had never smoked or drank before, and they were just completely abstinent from all mind-altering substances, I was so intrigued. I'm like, how did you do it? Like, I have so many props to you. Like, I always wanted to do that. I always wanted to be the person that never touched alcohol, never touched drugs, because I'm going to die if I do, right? And it's just, I've grown up hearing that it's in my genetics. There's three of you, like sibling wise, and one or two of you are destined to be an addict, and we don't want you going down this path, and these are just the statistics. And so in that moment, this person, it was the first time someone had ever held space for me before. And space being held is just when the other person is just staring at you. It's like they're channeling through consciousness. They're just a soul staring right into your eyes. They are not nodding yes or no. They're not, giving you that validation that we do in conversations when someone's talking to you. You're like smiling. You're like, yup. Or, you're intruding and you're making comments. And when I would stop talking, he wouldn't say anything. And so I would continue talking, right? This is what space being held is. I would just continue talking and talking and talking, and I would stop and I would wait for him to validate me, and he wouldn't. So I would just continue talking. And I just remember the one question he said was, what do you need to do? because I was talking to him about how my parents, my genes and my history, and I never wanted to drink. I just felt pressured to drink, and now it's turned into this whole other thing where it's not even pressure anymore. Now I'm the one pressuring people to do it and asking people to go out and to get drunk and to ignore my feelings and all this stuff. And all he said was, what do you think you need to do? And I just burst out crying, and I was like, I need to be sober. Like, I got the message today during that meditation that this is what, God is asking me to do. And if I want to do God's work, that I need to clean myself and clear my vessel of everything. And I just remember, I've shared this before, but I cried that whole weekend. I talked to so many people about it, and I ended up shifting the message that I got, which was being clear of all substances. And I shifted it to only giving up alcohol because that would have been easy for me. And weed, I don't know, weed I'm not addicted to, so we can stay with the weed. Like, that was just the insanity of my mind. That's just addiction speaking. And I was growing weed as well. I had started growing weed. I was growing it for maybe like a year or two. And I still remember when I was buying the equipment and setting it up, there was a voice inside of me that said, why are you doing this? You know that you don't want to be doing this for the rest of your life. And now you're buying all the stuff so that you can smoke. And it was just like, you're going to be doing this for a long time. You're going to continue using for a long time if you're smoking. And it was just like, I don't care. I just want to grow my own weed. And so I fought that voice and just continued to buy all the stuff and the lights and the tents and the pots and the seeds and everything. And during this time when I got this message, I had just harvested. Like, I was going home from this trip in Austin, Texas to harvest my weed. And so, I switched it. And I was like, no, I can still smoke weed. So I went home. And I started going to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, because I just knew it was a space for me to go. And, that's what my parents go to. I don't know how many meetings they go to a week still, and they have over 34 years of sobriety. But they go to meetings either every day or every other day, and it's a big part of their life. So I knew that that's where I could go to get support. And, my parents were really happy that I decided to give up drinking, but they were also like, you're not technically sober if you're still smoking weed. And like, I was like, why aren't they happy for me? Like, I decided that I wasn't going to drink anymore. I think they would be like flipping off their seats, but they were concerned about the weed. And I just remember I was so upset by it. I'm like, oh, finally, my parents are going to accept me and love me and, fully. And now I'm doing what they want me to do and what they've always wanted me to do. And I'm following, the way that they brought me up. And it was just like, nope, you're still smoking weed. So anyways, started going to meetings. And after 3 weeks of going to meetings, I realized very quickly, sitting in the rooms of church basements, that this isn't my freaking issue. My issue is marijuana. So 3 weeks later, I decided to give up marijuana. And I can say that this decision woke me up because I didn't have any substances I had no coping mechanisms. If I was angry, I would get high or drink. If I was sad, same thing. If I was happy, if I was irritable, if I was upset, if I was excited, if I was celebrating, any emotion that I felt, I was getting high for. And if I wasn't getting high because I was on a tolerance break, I was getting drunk or I was drinking, And I used to drink, so I'm going to get back to this in a second. So it was just like an eruption came through my body. And, when my sponsor first asked me, my first sponsor, when she asked me, how is your life unmanageable? Because the first step became aware that my life was unmanageable and that I was powerless over alcohol and drugs. And I was like, my life wasn't unmanageable. I had a job. I was a teacher. I was successful in what I was doing. I owned a house. I had an undergraduate degree. I had a bachelor's degree. I had a master's degree. I had good relationships with people. I wasn't in jail. I wasn't in rehab. Like, what do you mean my life was unmanageable? What do you mean I'm supposed to go back and figure out how my life was unmanageable? And I looked at so many of these, I looked back and I was just like, holy crap, my life was unmanageable. I was sneaking out of windows every night at my parents' house to go smoke in the garage. I was doing things like making myself throw up at night so that I wouldn't deal with a hangover in the morning, and then curing my hangover by being high all day. I just remember waking up in the morning and just smoking and then being so burnt out all day. It just ruined my whole day. I was just zombieing my way through life, literally zombieing my way through life. And I didn't recognize it in my using until I was on the other side and I was sober and I was in recovery. I was going to meetings, and I remember being in AA, and I would just share about marijuana all the time. And I remember somebody reached out to me and told me, hey, do you know that there's such thing as MA, Marijuana Anonymous? And I just was like, oh my God, no, I didn't know that. I had no idea it existed. And my parents had no idea it existed. And they've been in program for, 34 years. Well, at this point, it was probably like 31 years. And so I started attending Marijuana Anonymous online, which you just type into Google Marijuana Anonymous and everything comes up. I'll also post a bunch of links below if you're interested or any of this is resonating with you and you have a desire to stop drinking or desire to stop smoking. You don't have to be in the dumps to get into program. You just have to have a desire to stop drinking or to stop smoking, whatever one you're interested in, or both, like me. So I realized that my life was completely unmanageable and I was powerless over this thing. I remember that I would I didn't even want to smoke. I would pull out my Vera Bradley bag, this like green and turquoise and lime, all these different beautiful colors. It was like 10 years old and it just housed all my weed. And it housed my Gravitron and just all the different paraphernalia that we collect when we smoke weed, and we're pot smokers and we're potheads, right? I was a pothead. And I just remember, I would be grinding up the weed, saying in my head, I don't want to smoke. And then I'd be rolling something up and I'd be like, I don't even want to smoke. And then I would take the lighter and I would light it up and I'd be like, I really just don't want to smoke. And then I would hit it and I'd be like, screw it. I'm already high. Let's smoke the whole thing. So I was powerless over this. And, I would say, like, I could take a month off. I could take 2 months, 3 months off. I could take how much ever time I wanted off from smoking weed. And that's what I told my mom. I would say, I can stop smoking whenever I want. And she would say, yeah, but you always know that you're going to return to it. And I was just like, nah, I could stop whenever I want, And, well, to this day, I have 2.5 years of sobriety and recovery from both alcohol and marijuana. And other drugs and substances as well. And I didn't have any relapses. I decided to get off this elevator that was just going to continue to go down and down and down and down and down. And I decided, I don't want to say I made this decision. God came through my body and was like, if you want to do my work, then I need you to be sober. I need you to be clear. And once I was clear, like I said, everything just erupted for me. It was the first time that I realized that I had this crutch, that I've been numbing out everything, that I've just literally been zombieing for my whole time that I was using. And I love this visual of I was just hydroplaning my whole life. I was just hydroplaning. I was staying in place. I wasn't questioning anything. All I wanted to do when I got home from work and from anything is I would just get high. And you know what? I thought it was great. I used it as motivation. I'm like, after work, after you go for your run or do your workout, after you do X, Y, and Z, then you can smoke. Like I used it as a way to motivate myself. It was like an incentive for me at the end of the night. I just couldn't wait to smoke. And so when I first got sober, my biggest things that I was afraid of what my weekends would look like. I was afraid of what my nights would look like. I was afraid of what my friendships would look like. What does my whole life look like? Because I was just out every weekend at bars, or I was at home and I was just getting high and watching like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills or just all these different shows, The Challenge. I just got high every night. That was my routine. And I was just wondering, I was scared. What am I going to do? What do my friendships look like? And I can tell you that I stopped watching TV during this time as well. Like TV just went out the door. I gained this complete awareness of how precious my time was, and I just went really in and I went deep inside of myself because I was clean. I had to deal with all this junk that I didn't deal with. When I mentioned that I went through something really hard at the beginning of my college, being in college with my brother. I never mourned that. I never mourned that relationship that hurt me so bad. And I never did. I never processed any of my emotions because I was high or drunk. And so all in these moments, they all came to the surface. Everything came to the surface. And it was in these moments that I realized my life was unmanageable and that I was powerless over alcohol and weed. And then I needed help, and I needed to clear my vessel out. So it was really painful in the beginning. I just remember being in my bed and being really irritable or upset. And I'm like, I just want to get high. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, okay, so this is what you've been doing the last how many ever years. I don't know how many years it was, 7 years, 6 years, maybe 8 years. And that's when I really grew in awareness. And, there's a quote in the big book that just says, once you gave up alcohol, then all of these spiritual tools were laid at your feet and you were just rocketed off into the fifth dimension. I was getting sober. I was going to AA meetings and Marijuana Anonymous meetings. I was changing my relationships with people. I was awakening to this woman inside of me, myself with a capital S, who had been trying to connect with me for so long. It was like, finally, you're not just filling your vessel with this crap that is literally keeping you at a lower frequency so that I can connect with you, and I couldn't connect with you before. And so this visual of just hydroplaning and hydroplaning and hydroplaning, and as soon as I gave up alcohol and drugs, it was like I finally started to make traction with this ground. It was like the airplane was turning around and doing a complete 180, and at the same time I was completely awakening to who I was and this woman inside of me and all these dreams and desires that have been here the whole time, but I just have been completely zombie to because I was high and stoned or drunk or under some sort of the influence all the time. And it was really beautiful, and it was really, really, really challenging. So let's fast forward. 9 months into my sobriety, I resigned from my job as a high school math teacher, and I left the house that I had bought. I had left my family, and I moved to Costa Rica. And so I was a sober baby. It was a rebirth for me. If I had never given up alcohol and drugs, I literally to this day, if I look at my life today and I think about if I was drinking and drugging, where I would still be at Shrewsbury High School teaching high school math to beautiful children and not fully living out my dharma, my purpose. I would still be living in the town that I grew up in, and I would still be living at that house, and maybe I would have a partner at this point, and maybe I'd be getting married, and maybe I'd be having children. And not to say that some of those things aren't in my future, but today, as I'm recording this, I am sitting in my beautiful apartment during a gorgeous thunderstorm. It's pouring outside. I'm in Nosara, Costa Rica, and I have a business that I've started, and I am a completely different person. I am the person that I have always been trying to be. I'm the person that I was birthed into this world to be. And with a clean vessel, it's like my connection to God, my connection to source, my connection to self, they're all the same thing for me. Is like my channel is so wide and so big, and I'm getting to know more and more and more about myself. And I'm able to look at all these difficult emotions and I'm able to clear them out. Most of that was happening within the first year of my sobriety. But wow, massive changes happened in my life. I wasn't hydroplaning anymore. I was making traction, and then I was literally flying in the air. And I owe all of this to this decision that I made of stopping using alcohol and drugs. And I'm not an alcoholic, I wasn't an alcoholic when I stopped. I can say I was a pothead and I was a marijuana addict, and I can say that to this day, that I can't use marijuana, the way people do. Like, I can't just do it once a week or like once a day, it doesn't work for me like that. I can't just do it every here and there to celebrate. It's something that picks up. And I do remember a journal entry from a long time ago. It was in the midst of just chaos and everything was going wrong in my life. I was dating this guy that, like I shared, who relapsed on heroin, and I remember reading a journal entry of mine, and it said, I've drank every single day this week, and that scares me because I never thought I could drink every day. Like, I always got sick from drinking and all the other things I shared with you about drinking, and wow, this is pretty messed up, I had one horrible night. I was drinking in the morning before going to brunch with my sister, and I wanted to get drunk before the brunch. I was just in a really bad place. I was putting shots of vodka in my champagne. It was disgusting. And I was drunk before going out. Then I would have espresso martinis there. Then I came home and I'd made a fire. And I was so drunk. Like, I was just really drunk. And I remember going up to my room, grabbing acid and taking it, and then having forgotten that I had taken it and wondering why the TV was all like crawling by the time I got to bed. And I remember my friend came over and I was like, oh my God, why are you here? And they're like, you invited me over here. And I was like, what, really? And so they sat down with me, and I just remember crying and crying and crying and crying and crying and crying and chain smoking weed. And my friend was like, I can't smoke anymore. And then I remember I received a text from him the next morning, and it said, hey, I'm really worried about you. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm always here. But last night scared me. I've never seen you like that before. So I saw that if something really tragic happened in my future, that this addiction would take off. Like I had no coping skills but to rely on alcohol or weed to get through something. And so I decided to get off the elevator before it went down and down and down and down and down, right? And so, yeah, I have this whole new life. I have this different, deep, beautiful, strong connection with my higher power, with God, with source, with myself. I have a completely different life. And like I said, I wouldn't be recording this in Nosara, Costa Rica. I would still be living the same life that I was living. And I probably would have gotten married and had kids and been living in the same town. And then, waking up at some point during that and being like, oh my God, what have I been doing with my whole life, And when I first got sober, there was a lot of shame there. I was really guilty because I was finally connecting with God, and I was just apologizing all the time. I'm so sorry it took me so long to get to you, and I'm so sorry that I was just numbing you out all these years. I didn't know. And so I can't even imagine having been using for another 10, 15, 20 years and waking up to this life that wasn't even mine and being like, holy shit, I just wasted 40 years of my life. I just wasted all that time when I could have been really, making traction and changing my life and doing what's really meant for me and stepping into my power and trusting myself and having confidence and living so freaking courageously. And today I embody all of that. I've made these crazy, amazing decisions that are in alignment with me. I've been able to trust my voice, my inner voice over anybody, over family, over programming, over society, over everything, and really create a life for myself that is in alignment with who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing here in this iteration of my existence. And so if you take anything from this episode today is, maybe you're interested in trying out not using. Like, even if you don't have a problem with it, are you blocking your vessel? Are you blocking yourself from receiving guidance from your own self, from God? Are you interested in not drinking and not drugging? Or maybe you're listening to this and you know that deep down, maybe you have a problem, or eventually this could be a problem. Are you willing to take this action step today and to stop using, tuning in with yourself and asking yourself, is this something that could change my life? And, can I live a more fulfilling and purposeful and meaningful, deep life without these substances in my life? And it's scary. It can be scary, right? And that's why there's programs to help you through it. There's Marijuana Anonymous, there's Alcoholics Anonymous, there's Narcotics Anonymous, there's Overeaters Anonymous. There's like all of these different programs for different addictions and just different things different addictions is what I can say. And so, maybe you're listening to this and you have no desire to stop drinking and drugging, even if it's just like a little bit. Maybe you're listening to this and you're like, I definitely have a little bit of a problem, or this could be a problem, and why not just cut this now and live this beautiful life and never have to worry about being an addict or going down this route and messing up my life. And maybe you're in a full-blown addiction and you know it. And you're listening to this like, wow, how do I do this? How do I change my life? How can I make this decision and actually stick with it? How do I not relapse and all of that? And I just encourage you to listen to your inner wisdom and start going to support groups, start going to AA, start going to MA. Again, I'll put some links at the bottom, and reach out to me, reach out to me in the DMs on Instagram. Tell me that you came from this episode of the podcast, and I will do everything that I can and in my power to point you in the right direction and to guide you on this journey. I am an awakening coach. I guide awakened souls from unconscious living to awakened purpose. And yeah, so that you can start living the life of your dreams. And so if any of this resonates with you and you feel called to reach out, please reach out to me. I would love to have a conversation with you, love to get you going in the right direction, whether that's working with me or just, helping another, fellow traveler on this earth. And, yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. Thank you so much for your precious, precious time listening in and tuning in. Thank you for seeing me and for holding me and allowing me to be vulnerable here and share some really vulnerable stuff. 2.5 years of recovery and sobriety, and I'm just living the most incredible life that I never would have been given unless I made the decision to quit. And so you have the power to change your life. You have all the power. All it takes is just one decision. Just takes one decision. And then you just deal and you manage, like one of my good friends will say, you just make the decision and you just manage the rest of it. You manage the in-between parts. I would never give up the life that I have today to go back to using alcohol and drugs. I'm so freaking high all the time on life and feeling the whole spectrum of good feelings and not so good feelings and good things happening in life and not so good thing happening in life. I'm feeling it all and I'm human, and that's what we're here to feel. And all your feelings is your body communicating with you and sharing with you, hey, can you please look at this? There's something that we need to look at here. Can you please look at it? And if you're drinking and numbing something out by getting high, you're just ignoring your body's desire and design to awaken, and so, yeah, just making a decision and making it for the greater good of you and of the whole world and of all. Because essentially when you make this change, you step into your role that you're meant to be doing, you answer your highest calling, and then you're able to be of service back to this world that so desperately needs your help, needs you to be in your gifts, needs you to be in your calling. And so, yeah, give this podcast a like, follow for more episodes, reach out to me on Instagram. Again, I'm an awakening coach and just so grateful to be fully stepped into my dharma and to be here and to spread the message. And so sending you so much love, so many thanks for you tuning in today. And yeah, big blessings, big hug, big kiss. Ciao.